You use requests when you need something, like when asking for help, asking for information, or asking a person to do something. This video shows you 3 ways to make requests at work: polite requests, direct requests, and soft requests. Let's look at each of these requests now. The best phrase for making a request is, "Could you please?" like in this example. This is the best and most polite way to request a report from a coworker. Let's break down the structure of this request. Start with "could you please" and then add the verb for the action you need. Depending on what you need, you'll use phrases like "could you please go," "could you please help," "could you please send," "could you please ask," or "could you please stop." "Could you please" is a polite request because it uses the word please, which is always a good choice. Also, it's a question, not an order. Asking instead of telling makes your request more polite. This is also why we include a question mark when writing "could you please." Finally, could is more formal than can, so it's a better choice. In professional situations, "could you please" instead of "can you please" is a better, more polite option. Let's practice using "could you please" for requests. Here are 4 situations at work. How would you use "could you please" to make a polite request in each situation? Let's do the first one together. So you need the budget for next year. What's your request? Perhaps it could be, "Could you please email me the budget for next year?" We use the polite structure, "could you please," to ask for the budget. Now you try the next 3. How can you use "could you please" to make these requests? Pause the video now to write down your 3 requests. Ready? Let's check the answers. Number 1, you need help editing a report. You can make your request by asking, "Could you please edit the report?" Number 2, you need the training material. You can ask by saying, "Could you please send me the training material?" Finally, you need your coworker to ask your boss, Maria. You can request this by asking, "Could you please ask Maria?" Hopefully, you had the same answers. If not, review how to use "could you please." It's the best way to make requests at work, and you should be using it frequently. Now, let's look at a few other ways to make requests. You don't always need to use "could you please" when you need something. Sometimes your request is simple or quick, so you can give a command or order. Examples include, "Pass me that book," "Open the door, please," or "Hand me that pen." You can make orders more polite by adding "please," like in the example, "Open the door, please." Orders are less formal and much more direct than using "could you please." In this conversation, the man could be making a variety of quick orders. For example, "Review the first page, sign at the bottom," or "Write your name at the top, please." It isn't always reasonable to ask "could you please" multiple times, so you can use the imperative structure to give orders. Sometimes you need to soften requests to be polite or when you don't absolutely need something. An example is, "Would you mind closing the door?" In this case, if the person doesn't want to close the door, they don't have to. You give them the option to refuse when you ask, "Would you mind?" Notice the verb. Always use an ing verb after "would you mind." Other examples include, "Would you mind helping?" "Would you mind going?" or "Would you mind calling?" Here's another example from an email exchange. In this case, saying, "Could you please meet me at 1:30 p.m. would be too direct. When you use "would you mind," you give them the option to refuse or to choose another time. For large requests, you can add conditions before "would you mind." For example, you could say, "I'm not sure if you have time this week, but would you mind finishing the proposal a day earlier?" This request needs to be softer because you're asking to move a major deadline. Adding a condition at the beginning can soften the request even further. These are some ways you can use the phrase "would you mind" to soften your requests. You don't want to do this too often or you risk being too indirect. However, "would you mind" is great language to make polite requests. You've now seen 3 ways to make requests at work. Let's review when to use each. Use an order for a simple or quick request. Use "would you mind" to soften your requests. Use "could you please" for everything else, especially when requesting something in writing. That's everything you need to know. You can use "could you please" for almost all your requests. When appropriate, you can use orders or you can soften your requests. With those 3 options, you're ready to request anything you need in the workplace.